What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the You Know Ball podcast. I am your host, Trill Bro Dude, and today I'm coming to you live from Sandbox Studios. We are recording here, and I have back onto the podcast for the 500th time, Nihilist Bucks, aka Craigory Smith. What's going on, Craigory?
Well, just want to hear. I can't believe we're doing an entire podcast to break down the Utah Jazz signing Simone Fontecchio, but that's what we're here for.
I just heard who that man was today, and I was Googling him because I was like, I am just so desperate for any sort of brain chemicals from NBA news that I found out he's the top small forward on the international market, which is just absolutely massive news.
And now he's completely irrelevant because he signed with the Jazz.
And we will talk about the Jazz in a little bit. But before we get into anything else, we have to pour one out for the famed 5-team trade that we have mentioned on the podcast. We've been talking about on Twitter. Craigory, what happened with the 5-team trade?
The Phoenix Suns got cute, and I don't even exactly know all what happened. Like, obviously, the Pacers Ayton thing had been done since July 1st. Like, that it was a done deal, and they were sitting around like, yo, what the fuck? Get your shit together. Like, we're just gonna go unless you fuck. And then, but they also thought Phoenix wasn't gonna match because everyone assumed Phoenix wasn't gonna match.
Right.
So I don't know what the hell James Jones and Sarver are up to. Maybe Sarver's like, I'm not gonna be here in a month. I don't care. It's not my money. And then matched it. But
is he actually out? Is he like 100% for sure gone? Like, he's not allowed to own the team after this season?
Who the fuck knows? Like,
yeah. Yeah, I mean, he shouldn't be allowed to.
The investigation was close,
yeah,
or something like a month ago,
sure.
And of course they've been barely talking about it. So who the hell knows?
Yeah, because I remember tweeting that there will be some maybe decent players available, Dario Saric or Jay Crowder or whatever, because you know.
Yeah, so the Suns are in the tax for about $15 million, which is obviously Jay Crowder makes about 10, and then whatever other player you want to move around.
Yeah, they're going to have a hard time moving off Dario Saric. They're going to have a hard time moving off Landry Shamet. Saric coming off the torn ACL, Shamet just being bad.
Okay, so, yeah, I don't know if we have time to get to it, maybe a different podcast, but I did compile a list of guys. I have put them into 2 tiers, 1, fake, and 2, what the hell do they do? Shamet is in my what the hell do they do tier.
That's, first off, you're talking about former
Sixers legend,
former future superstar Landry Shamet, famously called the next Klay Thompson by a Sixers personality. We just gave him away. I can't believe that. He's been on like 5 teams in 4 years or whatever. But
him and Ron Harper, man.
I actually, going back to the 5-team trade thing, like, it always felt like a long shot that they could actually pull off a trade that massive. And with the KD shit seemingly going by the wayside, like, I don't think there's actually going to be any KD trade, at least until the season starts. And then the Kyrie shit going all over the place. And then Ayton going back to the Suns, like, it's just like everything that would have had to happen. It just seems it seemed impossible.
So real quick, just another tangent we're going on. How funny is it that Kyrie said he was going to play in the Drew League and instead went to Lakers practice? Not like Nets practice.
Well, look,
Lakers practice.
So first off, he was just getting LeBron ready for what it's like to be on his team next year when he told him he was going to play with him in the Drew League and then decided not to show up. So wait, he went to Lakers practice? I actually didn't even know this.
Yeah, there was a video of him with working out with the Lakers coach, or like one of the Lakers coaches. I guess he was holding a camp. Maybe it wasn't practice, but he was working out with the Lakers coaching staff.
Oh, well, I feel like that's illegal. I feel like I feel like you're not allowed to do that with another team while you're on another team and there's rumors about you being traded to that team.
Remember when Magic Johnson had to get fired or tampered or whatever the hell when he said like Ben Simmons asked to work out with him?
He said he wanted to have a camp about big guards, which has aged amazingly by Magic Johnson, and he wanted Ben Simmons to be like an instructor like with him and like help run the camp. and
Jesus.
and the league was, or the Sixers were like, no, you can't do that. And then he had to leave because, well, also he wanted to become a full-time tweeter and just tweet out like whatever Google, like AP stories from Google, just copy and paste them onto his Twitter page. But no, it's actually, we're gonna talk about the Lakers, so let's just talk about what happened with the Lakers. We don't have any like official slop. There was no recent big trades. There was no big signings.
The perfect Kyrie story that the Lakers thought they were getting him on the TPMLE, like a legitimate option. Or, like, I literally got that like 20 minutes before Kyrie opted in that he was going to the Lakers on the TPMLE, and that was done. And then he opted in, and it was just like, what the fuck? What you just told me he was going to you guys. What the fuck happened?
I mean, let's be honest. When he opted in, we all thought that was it too. We were like, oh, it's over. And then a few days later, it comes out, no, actually, he still is getting traded, and KD wants out, and blah blah. You can't fucking keep up with it.
And then, so Lakers, what shocked to no one, have basically told Kyrie that we're maxing you next year because Russell Westbrook's contract's over.
Sure.
That's, I don't know if that's a done deal or if it's just a wink, wink, and a nudge. Hey, if we're not going to sign you now or get you now, we'll get you next year.
Well, look, this happens with the Nets a lot, apparently. The Sixers did the same thing with James Harden. They're now giving him a smaller deal, but there's clearly a wink, wink situation going on. He's getting his
I'm sorry, I'm interrupting you again.
No, I was going to say he's getting the Supermax from Fanatics, so he doesn't really need to rely as much on that Sixers money. But the Kyrie stuff is like, I'm so over Kyrie in general.
He's okay. Well, first of all, I hope James Harden just never signs his contract. So we have to watch people try to do cap numbers like up into halfway through the season. Like, okay, he can sign up for 27.8, and that'll give them 4.3 under the apron, even though he's been playing under. I don't know. Just it'd be funny if they never announced the deal.
He just ends up on a two-way, and he's like playing for the Blue Coats. They're like, wow, what a selfless guy James Harden is. Like, at this
the
point,
Sixers have been fined 87 picks for tampering with Michael Rubin.
At this point, I would rather just have the Harden thing continue into like training camp, and then like we can all get worried. And I like, everyone says that they're waiting for some move to be made, but the only two players we've heard that they're interested in are Eric Gordon, who Harden would have to take a lot less money, and Patrick Beverley, of course, because they both played for the Rockets, and that's the only players that Morey can acquire. But like, if those deals don't happen,
a lot of less money. It's just
he would have to take like $4 or $5 million less than already what was reported.
Well, it depends on what the pack. I mean, obviously a Tobias trade's different, but sure. I mean, what the as Bucks fans like the package, like the George Hill, Grayson Allen, and like some other random salary package together. Your package is what, Korkmaz, Niang, and
Thibault,
and that's what, around 14. Like, Eric Gordon makes 19. I mean, theoretically,
sure.
You could do it right now, but then you'd have no room to sign anybody for the rest of the season, which is the problem.
That's the real problem, is that they would not have any way to fill out the roster. There would be like 12 or 13 players on the team. That's not going to happen. But back to the Lakers stuff, because beyond the Kyrie shit, which, by the way, Kyrie being on the Lakers is really the only thing that could possibly save them next season, I feel like, which is weird to say because normally Kyrie comes to your team and destroys it. But with this situation that's happening, like, the Lakers really have no other way out. The Pacers have basically said, we're good on Russ. You're not getting fucking Miles Turner and Buddy Hield. That was never going to happen. We'd rather put Miles Turner on the trade block until 2030 than trade him for Russell Westbrook.
He has been He has been on trade rumors for 3 presidents.
Obama, Trump,
and Biden. I'm so sick of Miles Turner trade rumors.
Yeah, I know. It's truly disgusting that they are still happening. But like, with the Lakers shit, like, if they don't get Kyrie, if they're stuck with Russ next season, especially after this weekend when Russ fires his agent, comes out and is basically like, fires his agent who he's had for his entire career.
Did you see did you see his message from that Woj posted in his article? The agent posted?
Yes.
That was insane.
The agent was basically like, so the agent was basically saying that like whatever Russ could be traded for was terrible, and they would have to give up shit to get off of the contract, basically in the Woj thing.
Yeah, and the agent was like, Russ, just go back to the Lakers, play point guard, try to improve your value. That's your best chance to get more money next year. And Russ was like, fuck you, I want out of the Lakers.
Which is so funny because, like, this is now, what, the third team in a row that Russ has been on where he just, like, wants out with a year after he gets there. And it's like...
I don't think he ever wanted out of the Wizards.
No, he did. He did. He went,
did he ever
he did.
out of the Wizards?
Yeah, because he went to Bradley Beal and told him he should ask out, too. There was, like, record of that. Like, Wizards reporters said that he wanted out and wanted to go to the Lakers. And the Lakers were stupid enough to trade good players for him and a draft pick somehow.
They traded a functional basketball team for Russell Westbrook.
Yeah, a team that had been to the finals and won the finals.
Include Alex Caruso because they had to cut him for a luxury tax bullshit since Jeannie Buss is a poor small business owner.
Well, to be fair, they did have to sign, fucking
Taylor Horton Tucker at $87 million.
The greatest trade asset in the NBA. So what can you really do there? But from everything that has happened with, like, between that, not only that, Rich Paul goes on Twitter and he's like, it's a cold world, and LeBron quote tweets it. Like, it is so obvious that if Russ goes back there, it is going to be insane levels of toxic.
Oh yeah, I mean, LeBron spent the entire offseason like twerking for Kyrie, like, obviously. Like, so it's just like
yeah,
Russ has eyes and ears too. He knows that everyone fucking thinks he sucks because he does. But
yeah, I mean, are you gonna do your victory lap now? Do you want to do it now or later?
I told you before the season, or no, 1 week into the season, he wasn't a top 40 point guard in the NBA.
I thought you said top 30 at the time, and then
it was 40.
It became 40.
You got mad at me because you brought up Killian Hayes. You're like, come on, it can't be 40.
Yeah.
But now I think that's too low. I think it's even higher.
So are you saying there are point guards in the Adriatic League who are better than Russ?
Yeah, I mean, I did mention George Hill, and they're about the same at this point because George Hill fucking stunk his ass up in the playoffs. So.
Oh, I've never heard that one before. I was told that he's only bad on the Sixers.
Yeah, no, he was good until, he was playing through a neck injury for whatever it's worth, but yeah, he was not good.
He's 97 years old. Of course he's playing through a neck injury. But from everything that Jake Fisher has said about this Kyrie situation, it sounds like he's going to stay in Brooklyn. Like,
yeah. That won't be uncomfortable.
Not at all. So he goes back to Brooklyn. Russ is stuck in LA unless they want to pay to get off of him and move him to the Spurs or
I would think Charlotte would make more sense. Because don't get Hayward. Hornets don't have to. They might even just take Russ for Hayward straight up because
they have no good players. Miles Bridges is now should be out of the league.
Correct.
And
that also will probably change how if they want to dump Hayward. That's fair. Because remember before the draft, they were like, we'll give you 2 firsts to get off Gordon Hayward's money.
Right. Yeah.
And then Gordon Hayward is just literally longer than Russ on the 1 year. Money.
Sure. Less money than what Russ makes, which is crazy.
47. He's the highest paid player in the NBA, I think.
It's close. Yeah, 46. It's like him and Steph, I think. But equally good players, by the way. No, but like if they were to trade Russ to the Hornets, let's just hypothetically say that, wouldn't the Hornets also have to give up more, like another like salary piece to make that trade work? And at that point, if you're doing that, like, why would you do that? Like, you would probably have to give up someone somewhat decent, right? Like, do they have any other salary filler on that team? Let me look up there.
Terry Rozier.
Sure. Yeah,
He's
Terry
not probably slightly better than salary filler.
He,
but he also
no,
makes
Terry
way too much.
Rozier's good. I mean, he's
Yeah, but
like
he
a
makes
15
way too much money.
He
He makes like $19 million.
Yeah, but playing in Charlotte, you get overpaid because no one wants
the
to play
sign and
there.
trade for Kemba Walker was hilarious.
Okay, they do have Mason Plumlee, so I guess that kind of answers that question. But
okay, that's a great. Hey, we need salary filler. Does any team have a Plumlee?
Literally just laying around like a Plumlee or a Zeller.
If you had to poll random fans right now, did they think Miles Plumlee is still in the league somewhere?
If you had to poll random fans, would anyone be able to tell the difference that Cody Zeller is not on the Hornets and he was replaced by Mason Plumlee?
Especially for like, if you just have like a blurry photo of Mason Plumlee.
Are they not the same human being? When that happened, I was like, this feels like it should be illegal. I feel like you should not be allowed to replace a Zeller with a Plumlee. I don't know if you're allowed to do that, but yeah.
Keeping the balance.
Yeah, so Jake Fisher says he thinks Kyrie's staying in Brooklyn. And from everything that the Lakers players have been saying, which obviously if Kyrie's going to practice, everything that they have been saying is that they think that Kyrie's still going there. And I just don't understand how that could possibly, if they're bringing back KD, unless KD is the one who's like, I don't want Kyrie on the team anymore, which it does not sound like that at all. It sounds like the opposite. It doesn't feel like it makes any sense to me for the Nets to trade Kyrie when they still have Kevin Durant. Like, if Kyrie goes back to that team, talent-wise, they're very good. Like, Kyrie, KD, the shooting. I'm not even going to bring up Ben Simmons.
Wait, a team with Kyrie on it not living up to his talent? That's never happened before.
Also, same with Ben Simmons. And,
God. I just forget.
Kevin Durant is the number one option. Just saying.
I keep forgetting Ben Simmons is straight up just on the Nets because it's just I haven't thought about. Like, obviously we bring him up to make fun of him all the time, but I haven't thought about Ben Simmons, the basketball player, in so long.
He hasn't played in over a year.
I know. Also, he's fucking tier. Why is Ben Simmons on this team? We'll get there.
Yeah.
Like I don't. The Nets, if you told me the Nets were like the 2 seed because everything went well and everything went healthy, I believe you.
Sure.
If the Nets were in the play-in again, I'd 100% believe you. Like,
yeah.
Literally, they could do anything.
Yeah, they have a wide range of outcomes, but there is no outcome in which they should trade Kyrie for Russ. Because the thing is, the Lakers don't have enough to just get, like, when they trade Russ, they're going to have to pay a team to take Russ's contract, whether that's 2 first-round picks or one first-round pick.
27 and 29 picks, baby. Those
right.
Unprotected super firsts that will not be as good as they should be because the Lakers are the Lakers.
Right.
And will be able to sign random good players that they shouldn't.
Yeah, exactly. Because they're the fucking fail sons of the NBA. And they no matter what they do, they could fuck up for a decade and they will always have something to fall back on. But, like, okay, let's just say hypothetically the Spurs were like, all right, we'll take Russ for we'll send you like Doug McDermott or whatever just to make the salary work. And then we'll take Russ's contract or maybe Zach Collins or whoever they need to send. And we'll just take 1 first. And then Kyrie goes to the Lakers. Maybe it creates a massive trade exception for the Nets. But like if KD's still on the team, that does nothing for you. And the Nets are going to get 1 first-round pick and a massive trade exception for Kyrie Irving. Like, that's not happening. So I just don't really see how Kyrie ends up on the Lakers unless the KD thing happens soon, is my whole thing.
Yeah, and I just, at this point, obviously the 5-team trade's dead. So it's just...
Badly.
What the hell is going to, like, the Nets are just going to run it back and it's going to be really awkward and uncomfortable. And we're going to get so many stories throughout the season of the vibes that either depending on who's leaking what, we're going to be either hearing how the Nets are actually, everything's good and coming together, or the Nets have never been worse. Like, it's especially whatever people just love because, you know, Kyrie's Kyrie. So people are just going to love to say about how bad Kyrie's vibes are. It's just going to be all sorts of insane articles about the Nets this year.
Yeah,
literally.
And everyone keeps saying the last dance, but everyone on Twitter is like, they didn't have a fucking first dance. It's a team,
they have one playoff series win.
They have 1 playoff series win against the Celtics without Jaylen Brown when they were playing Evan Fournier and Tristan Thompson like 35 minutes a game. Like, It's not like they had any sort of real legit success to demand any sort of like if you believe in the Nets, you are officially Charlie Brown because
they're what 7 and 8. They're under 500 in the playoffs. They're 7 and 8 in the playoffs. Like,
sure. And like, just, look, obviously yes, they're very talented, blah, blah, blah. But like, how can a team that just fucking hates each other? Like, that's why the Lakers Russ thing is like, even if LeBron and AD are healthy and they're back to their normal selves, first off, the rest of that roster's dog shit.
Second of all, Anthony Davis doesn't exist.
Yeah, he's not real anymore.
Correct.
Yeah. And the rest of the Lakers roster is terrible. And the Nets they're obviously much more talented, but like from a vibes perspective, you literally cannot get worse than that. So like if they want, like I keep seeing Nets fans like, oh, we're going to run it back one more time. I'm like, best of luck with that. That is not going to work in this Eastern Conference, especially when you have teams like the Bucks coming back healthy, the Celtics with adding more depth, the Sixers adding more depth. Like, I just don't see a world in which the Nets and their terrible fucking vibes are going to be legit contenders in the East next year.
They weren't. Yeah, I mean, they haven't been. I don't know. It's just, yeah. You could tell me the Nets are like a 2 seed and still lose in the second round. And I'd be like, yep, that makes sense. Or they.
Well, Kyrie's just going to fucking give up. Like that's what he does. The second things start to go bad.
Kyrie give up on a team before. Yeah. What do you mean?
Like I feel like we have collective amnesia when it comes to Kyrie. Like everyone's just like, well, you know. I'm like, all right, we'll see. Let him go to the Lakers. Let's see how the Kyrie LeBron reunion goes. Because LeBron teams have had bad vibes every year since 2016, basically. And that will continue to happen. And in getting Kyrie will not fucking help that. But
I know the answer. I figured out the answer.
What's that?
They need to bring back Delhi.
Bring him back from Australia. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, he's like a king. Obviously, he's a king down there. He like he's an owner player on like one of the NBL teams. Anyway,
he's an absolute legend, dude. Yeah. Doesn't he play for like the Breakers or something?
Yeah, I think it's the Breakers.
Yeah. But so kind of like just talking about like I have literally written down here, are the Lakers just going to suck again? We had a fun exercise. I don't think you were on that stream, NB, when we tried to figure out who the third best player on the Lakers was after LeBron and Anthony Davis.
Okay.
Look at their roster.
Left?
Look at their roster.
Okay.
And tell me who the third best player is. Because
my instinct is saying Stanley Johnson, which isn't great.
Oh my God. Stanley Johnson, can I interest you in Lonnie Walker, who's always been theoretically good and never actually good?
You cannot interest me in Lonnie Walker.
Let's see.
Is it Tom? I think it's probably just Thomas Bryant.
Thomas Bryant or Damian Jones, which is like if your third best player that we can select, because like in theory, basically what the Lakers did was the opposite of what they did last offseason. So last offseason, their plan was, we're just going to sign the 2011 All-Star team, and we're going to see if that works. And shocker, it didn't fucking work. This offseason, it's basically the complete opposite, where they're just signing guys who could maybe get better and like progress and develop, kind of similar to the Malik Monk that they did last offseason, but with players that have not been even as good as Malik Monk was when he was on the Hornets. So like you have Troy Brown Jr., who's had a bad start to his NBA career, Lonnie Walker, who's been a disappointment by all things considered, Thomas,
all because he cut his hair.
Who, Lonnie Walker?
Yeah.
Oh, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, and they tried to bully Dante into taking a veteran minimum. That was very amusing.
Yeah, and now, and honestly, if Dante was on this team, would he be the third best player?
Yes. And you know my opinion of Dante is like in the ground.
Yeah, you call him Bucks Thibault. Well, you did. Yeah. So yeah, that's.
I would rather have Thibault because his defense is better than what Dante's is.
I guarantee you he's going to be good on the Warriors next year. He's going to
100% be the Gary Payton 2 redemption arc, and it's going to be like everyone's like, "Oh man, the Bucks messed up by trading for Ibaka or whatever." It's like, no, he fucking sucked.
Yeah, I mean, post-injury, he couldn't hit a fucking shot too. I mean, it was like the one thing he had going for him offensively was that he could occasionally hit threes, and yeah, that was not. Yeah, but Steph will pull him to some sort of relevance.
He cannot convert a layup.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, Bucks Thibault makes total sense. But no, going back to the Lakers thing, like, so they have basically no good players right now. Like, so maybe some of these guys can get better. Maybe some of these guys can figure out roles around LeBron and AD, and like they've just not been in the right situation for themselves. But the reality of their situation is, like, if they don't trade for Kyrie, they have no legit talent outside of LeBron and AD. Russ is washed. He's going to fucking ruin the team, ruin the vibes. Their third best player is probably like Thomas Bryant, who's like coming off a torn ACL and is terrible defensively. Like, so there was a report this week, which is unbelievable, that the Lakers do not want to trade Taylon Horton Tucker, who also is in this. He might be in that argument for third best player because their team's so fucking bad.
No.
Okay, maybe he isn't. To be fair,
I will take Wenyon Gabriel before I take Taylon Horton Tucker.
To be fair, or Austin Reeves. To be fair, what's the difference between the third best player and the ninth best player on the Lakers? Like,
they some of them have half of a basketball skill.
Yeah, I mean, as Parm said, the best post scoring 6'4" guard in the NBA, Taylon Horton Tucker, which is a very valuable skill to have. But so they don't want to trade Taylon Horton Tucker for Patrick Beverley, who would instantly become the third best player on the Lakers.
Yeah, in my opinion, it's because they know they got Bledsoe in the bag. Like,
yeah,
because obviously Bledsoe's clutch. Just got waived by the Blazers. Hasn't played since before the trade deadline last year. So I don't even know if he was actually hurt or the Blazers are like, we're tanking and playing our young guys. You sit on the bench and look pretty.
Yeah,
because they obviously got him before the deadline. He only had $4 million guaranteed this year, so he's already gotten paid some money.
Sure.
So I have a feeling, he might just fucking take a minimum and try again next year because there's no money left. But anyway, I mean, the Lakers just seem like a mini LeBron and LeBron to get finally together.
There we go. We finally make it happen.
Yeah, clearly the Lakers could use another point guard. So,
Bledsoe instantly becomes the third best. Wash Bledsoe instantly becomes the third best player on the Lakers, right?
Yep, and I keep thinking, like, it's hilarious watching, just as an off-topic aside, watching Bucks fans fight about whether Bledsoe would be a good, like, fourth guard for us. And it's just like, of course, yeah, it's like,
who cares?
Yeah, exactly. But also it's hilarious. We'd have like a Pokemon evolution of our point guards of Javon Carter, Eric Bledsoe, and Drew Holiday. Like,
that's actually a good way to put it. Yeah. No, I know. There are plenty of Sixers fans that also want to sign Bledsoe, and I'm like, I have watched the NBA playoffs before, and I would like to not have to experience the Eric Bledsoe playoff experience. I've already experienced the Ben Simmons experience, and I'm good. I'm not going down that path with a point guard who can't shoot anymore.
It's the opposite of the Ben Simmons experience. Sure. It's slightly different. It's please stop shooting instead of please shoot. Please shoot.
It's literally the complete opposite. I'm good on Bledsoe, but he would be the third best player in the Lakers if they don't trade for Kyrie.
I just want everyone to understand Giannis's legacy was trying to win a championship with Eric Bledsoe as his third best player. And we were like, he can't get it done. And it was like, he had Eric Bledsoe as his third best player.
It's not the worst point in the world. Eric Bledsoe is pretty terrible, to be honest. But all right, let's take a quick break for an advertisement. What's going on, guys? I am here to tell you about Philly Sports Trip, sponsor of the You Know Ball podcast. They have a lot of great trips coming up, and you already know about Philly Sports Trips. If you listen to the pod, they provide you with a hotel, 5-star hotel, a flight, great tailgates filled with food and drink with other Philly sports fans. It's a lot of fun. We hope that you can join us this fall for some of the Eagles trips that are coming up. They will have a beautiful trip to beautiful Detroit, Michigan, which we all love, folks. You can go to the ultimate bus trip to FedEx Field to see our best friend, Carson Wentz, and maybe yell at him. Nothing too obscene, root against him very loudly. And also, they just have a lot of other great trips coming up. There's a Chicago baseball trip. You can check out a ton of stuff on their site, phillysportstrips.com. You can book for the Bell and the Birdman and You Know Ball. Tell them we sent you, and it will support the podcast, and also you will have a great time. So visit the link in the description. You can also check out their Ultimate Birds trips to Arizona coming up. Should be a lot of fun as well. So you can book at phillysportstrips.com in the description and tell them we sent you. Now let's talk about the Knicks again. We talked about this a little bit on the last episode. There has been basically no progress on the Donovan Mitchell front from the Knicks' perspective. The Knicks are kind of playing hardball with the Jazz right now. Danny Ainge is probably trying to fleece them, is my guess, and get every single pick that they have. Every single...
He wants the fucking 29 pick.
He wants the 29 pick unprotected. He wants everything. He's going against the Zach Lowe end theory of the apocalypse happening in 7 years, and he's banking on the fact that there's going to be some 12-year-old prospect that's out there right now that will be the next LeBron or Giannis or whatever.
Yeah, so last that happened was during the 5-team trade era, RIP. The Nets are offering Ben Simmons and 4 firsts for Donovan Mitchell, because obviously they can't have Simmons and Mitchell. Then the Nets came in and ruined, or the Knicks came in and ruined everything by offering like some ridiculous package that I hadn't gotten the exact number of first offered, but it was as high as 7.
Sure.
And like Randall, Quickly, and Toppin, and like it was 4 firsts and 3 swaps or something like that. And I was like, for Donovan Mitchell?
But at the same time, how many of those picks are you paying to get off of the Julius Randle contract? 2? Like, I
That's fair.
I don't think Julius Randle's contract is like horrendously bad. Like he makes what, 25
I think he's going to get a lot better in Utah because he plays better with no crowds. So
it's true. Yeah, he had the best season of his career during the Mickey year. But
so yeah, I mean,
but hold on. Let's run it back.
All those 3 fake firsts from the draft they got.
Sure. Yeah. The fake firsts that they got from OKC, which are like top 14 protected and really have no actual value to most teams. But going back to your 5-team trade thing, so that would have been Simmons going to Utah with the Phoenix picks, I assume, right? Because the Nets don't have picks.
There was at one point a report of a Pacers pick, which again doesn't really make sense to me unless there was more movement going on with like they were getting off Buddy Hield or something.
Sure.
I don't know, but anyway, yeah.
Yeah, and that would have been like Mitchell, Bridges.
Or no, it was the Suns picks and the Lakers picks.
It doesn't matter now. It's over. Picks. So Mitchell, it would have been like Mitchell, Bridges, maybe Ayton. I don't know. I don't even know if Ayton would have been able to be included because of the designated rookie extension, all that shit, blah, blah, blah. But now it seems like the Knicks deal is kind of inevitable. And I said it on the last episode where I felt like Danny Ainge leaked that story to basically put pressure on the Knicks to make a deal, because if they don't make a deal now, like, cool, you just had the best opportunity to get a star. This is literally what you brought in, these basically boosters from CAA in Leon Rose and Worldwide West to come in and just recruit. You got Johnny Bryant as your assistant coach. You've just been basically hiring guys to recruit on your behalf. You have everything set up for Donovan Mitchell, and now is Danny Ainge really trying to like hold them over a barrel? Is it like, are the Knicks really just being cheap because they've been super conservative ever since they hired this front office? My guess is that a package looks something like this. Honestly, this is what I think the Jazz are probably trying to get right now. And I think the Knicks are like, that's way too fucking much. Like I think it's going to be Emmanuel Quickley, Obi Toppin, Quinton Grimes, Deuce McBride, Derrick Rose, 5 firsts and 2 swaps.
Good Lord. I'm wondering if the Knicks also have brains and go, we just signed Jalen Brunson to $130 million or whatever the hell the contract was.
Right.
And you want us to pair him with Donovan Mitchell? Like, that's not going to work at all.
It's Dame and CJ, but in New York.
And they're smaller and
yeah,
less good at basketball.
Slightly, not. I mean, but then again, wouldn't that still be the most success the Knicks have had in like 20 years?
They made the Eastern Conference Finals with the one time, didn't they? With the Melo year.
Did they make it? I don't think they made it past the second round with Melo. I think Melo only made 1 conference finals in his career, and it was on the Nuggets.
Oh, maybe that's true. Or they were the 2 seed in the regular season, and they didn't make.
They didn't make the. Yeah. But they've really only had one like somewhat successful year in the past 15 to 20 or two, really, the COVID year, which is now looking like an outlier. And my whole thing here is like, look, I get it. And like, it's always fun whenever these trades happens because you get to see fan bases go through fan base psychosis on Twitter.
Oh yeah.
Where like I saw a tweet earlier that said that
the Celtics one.
No. I saw Quickly, Toppin. We'll talk about that one in a second. Quickly, Toppin, and Grimes can turn into franchise cornerstones and stars in New York.
Like, what? Okay. What is this like? Consent going around. We'll get to Quinton Grimes. What the fuck do people think Quinton Grimes is? Am I being punked? Is this like a bit that I'm not aware of?
I have no idea. I feel like everyone's losing their mind over a guy that averaged like 8 points a game in 20 minutes a game last year and played
a top
good
125
defense,
player in the NBA,
which is insane because he's destroying summer league. I don't know, like. Is Tari Eason already one of the top 125 players in the NBA? Is like, I just don't really get the whole Quinton Grimes thing. Like, if you're letting Quinton Grimes hold up a deal, which is like apparently like they want to include more first so they can keep Quinton Grimes, which makes sense to me because you want to have role players left after you gut your fucking roster to get Donovan Mitchell. But at the same time, my whole thing on this is like the Jazz they want Quinton Grimes, one, because he's on a rookie deal. Two, because, yeah, maybe he can have some role player potential to be like a 3-and-D guy or whatever. But mostly they just want to make the Knicks as bad as possible. Because if they make this trade, it's going to be Brunson, Mitchell, Barrett, Randall, Robinson as the starting five, which like defensively it's going to be a disaster defensively. You basically have in that starting lineup, you have two positive defenders in RJ Barrett and Mitchell Robinson. And then you have Julius Randle, who is, when he doesn't try, which I would imagine if he's like the fourth option on offense next year, he's definitely not going to fucking try, can be a disaster. Mitchell, we know about his issues defensively. Maybe coaching, working with Thibs, he'll be better. Maybe not being in Utah, he'll be better. I don't fucking know.
He was a good defender his rookie year and was rated as a good defender coming out of college.
Sure.
And now he's just turned into a disaster.
Yeah.
Like, literally, like, to the point where I haven't looked at his playoff net rating, but if you told me Mitchell's playoff net rating was somehow negative despite putting up like 40 a game, like I would believe you. I actually think it's his net rating is better in the playoffs than it is in the regular season. But also keep in mind he had the bubble season and he had the like 50 points a night game or whatever.
I think Mitchell, if anything, might be being underrated by everyone because of this past season. And like, I really think the defensive thing is at least partially effort. And I think that he could get back to being like a neutral defender when, if he's going to a team like the Knicks, like they at least have like three other offensive scoring options. Not that I guess the Jazz kind of did too, though. They had Clarkson, Conley, and Bojan.
Just forming the worst Jazz. Like instead of Rudy Gobert, they have Mitchell Robinson, who is, all respect to Mitchell Robinson, he is not Rudy Gobert.
Sure,
this is gonna be a disaster.
So, if you look at their bench after they would make that trade, it would be Isaiah Hartenstein, who actually is pretty good. He's a solid bench player.
Good.
So good backup big. Evan Fournier, who, if he's your seventh man, I think it's fine. And then after that, it's like, I think Cam Reddish, which everyone knows that listens to the podcast knows I'm not a Cam Reddish guy. Norristown Zone's Cam Reddish.
High school.
Yeah, look, maybe Cam Reddish can turn it around, figure it out, but I'm not high on that. And then Jericho Sims, who's shown some stuff, but also like he'd be like your third string center. So like, really, what does that help? And rookie Trevor Keels, which like, I don't know, the Knicks seem to be pretty good at drafting like role players, so maybe he'll be decent. But like, you're depending a lot on guys who have Cam Reddish, who's never been good in the NBA, like consistently at least. Jericho Sims, who didn't really play, and he would be your third string center, so he wouldn't even be in the rotation really. And Trevor Keels, who's never played a game in the NBA. So I'm not super high on the Knicks after this trade, but also my whole thing is like, why not? Just do it. Who cares?
Yeah, you're the Knicks.
Yeah.
What else he doing?
You've already leaned into being too good to tank. So like it's the difference between being like the 11 seed and the 7 seed. And like, hey, at least you're like probably in the playoffs if you're the 7 seed.
Yeah.
I guess that's the pitch. Like, the mid in Midtown, like we're just gonna be super mid and hope that RJ Barrett gets better. I don't know.
Maybe I'm just not remembering something off the top of my head. Has a team ever made one of these trades when it's like absolutely 100% clear this team will not even be good if they make this trade?
Well, yeah, I guess the difference between this and the Rudy Gobert trade is that the Timberwolves will still be good. They're just not going to win. They're probably not going to win a title, and they went all in on that.
No, but also the Timberwolves, like the Knicks, like literally they haven't made the playoffs 2 years in a row since Kevin Garnett was there.
Sure.
So they just like, we have a core. We want to at least do something.
Well, it would be the Brooklyn Nets, right? When they traded for Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce, and like that team was pretty mid, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, obviously that would be that one. And then
that's the only one I can think of where like you're just overpaying everything you have to become like a 6 seed or 7 seed.
Yeah, it's so wild. Like Zach Lowe's gonna rip his hair out. Like,
yeah,
you thought the Gobert trade was bad?
Well,
at least you understand the dynamic of Cat is a 4 and like cannot rim protect. So we get the best rim protector, if one of the greatest ever at it. Put it next to him. And then for this one, it's like, okay, we have Jalen Brunson, and we're going to pair him with Donovan Mitchell. And it's like the Spider-Man meme. Obviously, Jalen Brunson is not as good.
Yeah.
But they're like, it's just, what? You have Jalen Brunson's a better playmaker, so you put Mitchell at the 2, like as he normally is, but it's just a disaster. Like,
yeah, I don't know about that. I think Donovan Mitchell's a pretty good playmaker now. But I do think that, like, my whole thing with this roster construction is like, you've basically created the thing that I think is it's just like very anti what the NBA has become, which is like having a ton of space. And like all of these guys, like Randall's mid-range heavy, clogs up the paint. Brunson does a lot of his work in the mid-range and the post. Mitchell is the one guy that will be a consistent pull-up threat, but also the spacing around him isn't going to be great. RJ Barrett, if he stops just taking pull-up threes, which he's a fucking disaster at, and just decides to be like space in the corner guy and like be like a secondary, like third option, I could see him growing into like as I've described, like basically like a slightly worse version of like what Andrew Wiggins has become. If that's like, to me, that's like what his ideal role is. So maybe that could work, but like Mitchell Robinson can't shoot. Julius Randle has the worst shot selection in the NBA. Jalen Brunson can shoot, but he's more of a mid-range guy. And then RJ Barrett is like a decent shooter off the catch, but like not a great one. Like, I don't know. Like, I think you do this deal once again because you think that you think Mitchell's going to get even better in a new situation, which I actually think offensively his situation in Utah was pretty ideal. He had one of the best pick and roll bigs in the NBA, defense or offensively, also defensively, one of the best bigs. He had insane shooting around him. He had Bojan Bogdanovic, Joe Ingles, Jordan Clarkson, Mike Conley. Like, he had guys who could just shoot like over 40% off the catch. Royce O'Neal, even, like, pretty decent shooter. Like, it will be interesting if they do this trade to see. It really all depends on RJ Barrett, because if RJ Barrett is what I think he is, which is like tops out as like a decent role player, then this trade is probably looks really bad in a few years. And Donovan Mitchell, if he can't get another second star there, he's probably going to Miami anyway in like 3 years or 4 years, because that's why they hired, or Dwayne Wade took part ownership in the Jazz, apparently, because Pat Riley has fucking shooters everywhere. But the Knicks thing is like you're kind of locking yourself into a mid team with not a ton of flexibility, and then you're basically betting on the fact that RJ Barrett can become an all-star. And if RJ Barrett becomes an all-star, which I don't think he is, then this trade is actually pretty good, because in a few years you have Mitchell in his prime, Brunson as like a sub all-star type guy, Barrett as a legit all-star, and then you have like a really good young team. But like I just don't really see. I look, once again, they should do it because they have no other options. But like I don't know. Like if I were a GM, I would not be signing myself up to be kind of middling. But once again, what else are they going to fucking do?
Okay. So I have two things. One, what if after they trade for Donovan Mitchell, they wait until the deadline and they trade Jalen Brunson back to the Mavs for like Tim Hardaway Jr. and get some more shooting around.
Bring Tim Hardaway Jr. back for the third time?
Yeah. Just trade him back to the Mavs. It'd be very funny.
It would be a good bit. Yeah.
Then the other thing was
they hired his dad.
His dad and his agent is that was
Leon Rose's son.
Tampering I've ever seen.
Yeah, I mean that has nothing on Michael Rubin just signing fat checks for PJ Tucker and whoever else we got.
Yeah, I also want to know I want to know that. I mean, they're just gonna get fined a second round pick because that's just they don't even investigate. They just go, okay, this was so obvious, second round pick, bye.
Sure.
I want to know if it's tampering to talk to your dad.
They're like, Silver has like fucking moles at family dinners. Like, you better not fucking talk about going to the Knicks.
Yeah, they just have Thanksgiving. I wouldn't shock me if these two families had Thanksgiving together. Rose was his Rick Brunson's first client was Rose. So it's Leon Rose.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
I know what you mean. Yeah.
The other thing is, okay, so the Jazz are turning it down to the studs, obviously.
Sure.
And every time we've seen a star, when we've seen a star publicly demand out, the NBA rigs the lottery and gives them number one prospect.
Always.
But in this case, neither of them actually ever did publicly asked out.
Sure.
And they are just ripping it down to the studs.
Yeah.
Do we think the NBA is going to reward the Jazz and give them Wemby? Because I don't think it would be so funny if they replaced their French center with a new French center.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I just don't think the Jazz are ever not going to get Wemby. The NBA wants to put Wemby someplace else.
Yeah, I'd be pretty surprised, but I also think that I guarantee you Donovan Mitchell has asked for a trade. We just don't know it. It hasn't leaked because Ainge wanted to keep some sort of leverage, but from everything that's been reported, like Tim McMahon said, like Mitchell basically went to them and was like, all right, what the fuck are we doing? He's been angling his way out of there. I think he sees this as his opportunity to get out. I think you're right. Like, I don't think that they don't want like the stars of the league, like in back-to-back drafts ending up in like Orlando, Oklahoma City, and Utah. Like, I don't think that would necessarily be what is best for the league. But at the same time,
it's probably
the Jazz are going to be like
have stars everywhere, but
like the thing is that next year's draft is so fucking loaded with talent. Yeah. Like the top 6 guys could have been in the conversation for the first pick, or at least like the top 2 or 3 pick in this draft. And so this is the right year to tank because no one's tanking. Like the Spurs are the only team, the Spurs and the Jazz are the only team other than the Thunder, but the Thunder are their own entity, that are just like, yeah, we're going to tank this year. And they picked the right year to fucking tank. Like, it's
Do you
smart.
know who the highest paid player on the Spurs is?
Zach Collins?
No, it's Doug McDermott. Like, it's $17 million. It's like,
wow, he makes $17 million. I thought he made like $12 million.
Or extravagant, where it's like, what the hell? Maybe he makes like 14 or something. But it's not a high number.
Yeah.
But for their highest paid player, it's like how Kenny Olynyk's the highest paid player in the Pistons. Like, it's just like, what?
Well, I give them credit for finally fucking actually leaning into a rebuild and not trying to make the 10 seed every year for some reason. So at least,
because they wanted to get Papa's wins record, and now they're gonna stop. They're gonna stop trying.
Yeah, that was their last goal, and now yeah. So all right, let's move on to the last thing we're gonna talk about, which is Seth Partnow from The Athletic, who does this every year. He does it twice a year. His tiers list. So he ranks the top 125 players in the NBA by tiers. And he released his list this week. Now, I do just want to say before we get into this, most of these lists, most of the tiers lists, the players list, whatever, there's always going to be like some shit that people don't agree with, of course. Like this, to me, this isn't as egregious as like what Bill Simmons and Ryan Russillo did with their trade list, which I did an entire podcast on and became
Jaden Ivey, noted regular season guy.
Yeah. You know, playoff performer, Tyler Hero, all that stuff. Which, by the way, became the most popular episode of the podcast somehow. It's just amazing how much people hate Bill and Russillo. But we're going to talk about Seth's list. And overall, I think Seth's list is like pretty fine. I didn't have like a bunch of major gripes with it, but it's always interesting when you try to rank these guys. And then like there's always like 4 or 5 guys where I'm like, what the fuck is going on here? Why is this guy this high? Why is this guy even included? So the first guy we talked about was from the first tier, 5A, I believe it was, which was
at the bottom.
Quinton Grimes, which is ridiculous. What has Quinton Grimes done to be a top 125 player in the NBA? Now, if you're projecting into next season and you're saying you expect him to take a step forward and maybe he gets more minutes and maybe his 3 is just as good as it was last year and his defense is really good, but like there's nothing that this guy showed as his rookie year that he should be on the top 125 players.
I don't care if he takes a step. Like, obviously, I'm going to say 2 biased names, but even like DeAnthony Melton, like Pat Connaughton, Bobby Portis, none of these guys are on the list, and they are like, and Quinton Grimes is on the list. Like,
yeah.
What?
No, I was surprised he didn't put DeAnthony Melton, to be honest, because he's like a calculator boy favorite, and Seth's a bit of a calculator boy. So I was confused by the inclusion of him. So the whole list itself is like, the idea behind it is that it's supposed to be like you're ranking the players based off like their championship equity, which anytime someone says equity, it makes me want to throw up. But like
Pat Connaughton was literally the 6th man on the championship team.
Right.
Didn't make the list.
Right. Like, and Bobby Portis had big moments in that playoff run and did not make the list. And like, if that is your argument, then like there's no way that there are certain guys that are like have been like legit role players on good teams. Like, look, all right, maybe
Tucker is too low if it's championship equity on this list. But anyway,
PJ Tucker's what, 5A?
5A.
Yeah, sure. Maybe I missed him, but was Otto Porter Jr. not just like starting on a championship team last year?
I didn't see him. I saw Gary Payton II and not Otto Porter.
Who Gary Payton II was good for the Warriors, but also like has had one good year in his NBA career, and he's already not even in the last tier here. He's in like the 4 tier, which how do you not include Otto Porter, who after he just like started for a championship team in the playoffs and like legitimately contributed? I know he's injured and like has had whatever, but like his career overall has been pretty decent. Like I would have definitely included him here at the end.
I would have included him over PJ Washington, which I love PJ Washington, but everyone's it's mostly theoretical with PJ Washington. Everyone thinks he could be good if he gets out of Charlotte.
Sure. Yeah. You know, that's more projection. Most of the guys that were in this last year were fine to me. Like,
okay, I mean, if we're starting at this tier, I have, let's see, players that I have that should not be in this tier. Caris LeVert is not a top 125 player.
I agree with that. He's so overrated.
Oh yeah, Quinton Grimes. I don't love the inclusion of Io, but obviously, like, if he's like the 125th best player in the NBA, maybe
he was pretty good his rookie year. Yeah.
Yeah. Russell Westbrook has nowhere. It should not be in this tier at all.
Let's talk about Russ because, like, let's look at some other guys that are in this tier along with Russell Westbrook.
Do you want Luguentz Dort or Russell Westbrook?
Kyle Kuzma, who was already
I will take Kyle Kuzma before Russell Westbrook. Like,
sure. Let's Contavious Caldwell Pope. Multiple guys who have already been fourth, fifth starters on.
KCP should be higher up, in my opinion.
KCP, who was already a starter on a championship team. Kyle Kuzma,
Looney should be higher up than 5A. Like, why the fuck is Gary Payton so high and Kevin Looney's in 5A?
Oh, Gary Payton is in 5A. So
okay, well,
okay, I just saw that. Yeah,
Looney should be above.
I agree with that.
Be in 4B or something.
Also, another guy that I thought was a bit of so the Russ thing. If you're trying to build a championship team, right? Russell Westbrook cannot be on your team.
Correct. Even on a minimum, he cannot be on your team.
He is destructive when he's on winning teams, on contending teams, because he makes them not contenders because of his play style, his inefficiency. In theory, if you are to build a team that is going to win a championship, Russell Westbrook is, what is he, your 6th man? Okay, even during those minutes, he might be a little bit destructive. Like,
if the ideal role for Russell Westbrook, Jesus.
What John Wall's going to be for the Clippers, but like John Wall's might buy into that role more and like actually.
And also the play style makes a lot more sense for a 6th man than or whatever John Wall's going to be than what Russell Westbrook is.
Sure. I did not get his inclusion at all. Another guy on here who it's hard to say because like I actually think this guy is talented and like I don't think Nikola Vucevic is bad, but like if I'm making a championship team, how can my center be as bad on defense as Nikola Vucevic and not good enough on offense to like make up for it? Like, I don't think Vuce can really be on a championship team. Maybe as a backup big, but like if you are strictly building this list for championship equity, as he says, then I don't really get that. Now, as floor raising guys, Vooch, and at least not this year's Russ, but like last year's Russ or the year before that, I can hear that argument, but from everything he said, it's based on being a part of a championship team, and I just don't really see either of those guys.
Then why is Harrison Barnes in 5A for doing championship teams? I don't understand, Seth. Please explain how Harrison Barnes is in 5A, Kyle Kuzma's in 5A, like all these players that would I don't know,
obviously be
ridiculous.
Like the fourth best player. Kyle Kuzma already was like the fourth best player in a championship team. Harrison Barnes was already like the fourth or fifth best player in a championship team. Like these are things we know. We have the proof of concept, and they're still pretty good players. So another guy that I thought was way too low on this list, considering there are two guys really, Franz Wagner being 5A and Josh Giddey being in the tier above him, is insanity. What is going on with the Franz Wagner thing?
What is going on with Josh Giddey?
And
what happened?
It.
Why does everyone think? Is it because everyone like Dune? Like,
Timothée Chalamet has brainwashed the NBA media into thinking that Josh Giddey is a star because of what happened in Dune. No, but
what is Michael Porter Jr. doing in 4B?
Okay, before we move on to any other players, let's talk about Franz Wagner versus Josh Giddey. Because
flirting versus harassment, yes.
Flirting versus harassment. Franz Wagner is just way better than Josh Giddey at literally everything except for passing, and Franz Wagner's still a good passer and like way better defensively. By the way, I did an episode recently where we talked about Scotty Barnes versus Franz Wagner, and I apparently was wrong. I had someone who like does film study reach out to me about this, and they were like, I know you probably don't watch a ton of Magic games, but like Franz was actually one of the best defensive rookies that there's been in quite some time. Like he was very legitimately good as a defender in his rookie year, and I would argue better than Scotty Barnes as a defender in his rookie year. And I was like, okay, well, if that's the case, like Franz is a very legit defender. I knew he was a good defender, but he's a very legit defender. We know what he can do offensively. He's already shown some like potential to be like, if not a secondary guy, like at least like maybe a lower end primary offensive option. He can shoot, he can pass, he can score. Why in the world is Josh Giddey better than this guy? Because he's a year younger or like a few months younger? Is that it?
Because he's more handsome.
Literally just he's better looking. It's, to be fair, I understand that. Yeah. He's dreamy. But yeah, if Josh Giddey, like, okay, so everything with Josh Giddey, and maybe this ages poorly, because I've said, like, the theoretical upside with Josh Giddey that's interesting to me is if Josh Giddey becomes a good shooter. Because if Josh Giddey can become a good shooter, then yeah, he's legit. But, like, we have not seen that yet. And if he cannot become a legit pull-up shooter, a guy who has that threat of shooting, his defense isn't nearly good enough to make up for the fact that he's not like a great shooter. And then also, do you want your primary option to not be a great shooter when he has the ball all the time? Like, he's a very smart player, good passer, good playmaker. He can, he has the touch, I think, to become a good shooter. But like, what if he's just Ricky Rubio 2.0 and he's not quite the defender that Ricky Rubio is? Like, you're really putting him 4B in his second year at 19 or 20 years old?
Yep.
Makes no sense to me at all.
I don't understand what old-ass Kyle Lowry's doing in 4B.
Why is Mike Conley in 5A? Didn't he make the All-Star team the year before this year?
I mean, he got the honorary Adam Silver feels bad for you All-Star team. But
he did, but was he not like a top 30, 35 player like a year or two ago?
I mean, he was so washed this year, though.
He was.
Bad.
I understand that. I know that he's... And look, maybe some of this is considering that, but like Kyle Lowry was not nearly as good as he was like in the past this year. Like, I don't think Kyle Lowry was anything special. I thought he was terrible in the playoffs.
4B is when Seth kind of got lost in the sauce for me. This tier is a mess.
Okay, what do you not like about this tier?
Like, Michael Porter Jr. being in here at all, like let alone Ben. Like, we'll get to Ben Simmons, who does not belong in like 3C or whatever the fuck he's in. Michael Porter, like, what? We're judging him off like one season in fake basketball. Like, that's the only Michael Porter Jr. we've seen.
But I at least get with Michael Porter Jr. where, like, if he could ever be healthy, which I don't think he will be, that's the big thing to me, why I wouldn't even maybe include him on here, is because I just don't think Michael Porter Jr. is ever going to be healthy enough for it to matter that he's, like, an insanely good shooter and, like, a decent ball handler. Not really. Like, of whatever
think
ball
he's
handler.
Healthy, which is the only way his tier listing makes sense if they think he's healthy.
Sure.
And he averages 20 and like whatever.
And why playing off Jokic.
Why is he in the same tier as Herbert Jones? If he's 20 points a game up.
Why don't we talk about Herb Jones? Why is Herb Jones okay?
This is consent versus harass.
So why is Herb Jones like this no-brainer elite level role player after one season to me? Like, defensively, he's awesome. I'm not going to deny the fact that he's awesome. But, like, offensively, I do wonder. Like, I know that, like, he can do a little bit with the ball. Like, he can make a little bit. But, like, his shooting history has suggested that he's not a good shooter. And everyone just kind of assumes he's going to be a good shooter. Like, he shot 25% from floater range this year, I think. He shot 32% from 3, I believe, which is also not good. Like, unless he is, as someone tweeted at me after the episode we recorded about the trades list, like the trade value list, unless he is a Draymond Pippen level defender, as they said, which a lot of people were saying about Matisse Thybulle after his rookie year and when he shot hot from 3 too. And Herb is better offensively than Thybulle and might even end up being better defensively than Thybulle because he's better on ball. But, I mean, unless Herb is like elite defensively, like defensive player of the year candidate, plus the shot is real, then like I think we might be crowning him a little bit too early is my whole thing. I would have been fine including him in 5, but like the players that are in this tier are like former all-star. Like Kyle Lowry was a former all-star.
If you're building a contender, that again, we assume these tiers are like championship equity.
Sure.
Herbert Jones on a contender is what, the
fifth best
starter or whatever, your worst starter on a championship team. Like Tyrese Halliburton could easily top out as like either the third, maybe a second. I think probably the third best player on a championship team. Why is he in the same tier? Like Jordan Poole was just like, Jordan Poole was what, like the fourth, but fifth. The Warriors were all terrible in the finals.
But he showed his warts in the playoffs, which I understand a little bit, which would lower his like, I guess, inclusion in terms of like, you don't want to put him too high because he still did have struggles in the playoffs. But like, there are a lot of people in 4B that are really legitimately good. I think a little bit. Here? Yeah, I do think.
Because why is Derek White in 4B and Grant Williams is in 5A?
Yeah. I mean, Derek White also struggled in the playoffs a lot.
Derek White was dog shit.
Yeah, in the finals especially. He was very bad.
Obviously, I got a first-hand view of Grant Williams ending my life, but...
Yeah, I mean, he definitely...
Grant Williams also was no slouch on defense. He gave Giannis some trouble. Like, why the fuck is Derek White in 4B and fucking Grant Williams in 5A?
I guess the argument there would be like Grant just had his first good year and White's had a few good years in the NBA, but like there's no consistency really when it comes to some of the inclusions.
What are you talking about?
I know. That's what I'm saying. Is like, was Herb Jones that good as a rookie?
Someone off the trails for me, and then we get into like 4A. We could spend like 3 hours on this tier list. So, you tell me when we're done. I got all day.
So 4B, and like I said, includes like some like sub all-star-ish guys. And you know, the Miles Turner, De'Aaron Fox, Tobias Harris, John Collins kind of guys. Brook Lopez, who was already the 4th best player on a championship team, so his inclusion there makes sense. So 4A, this is where it sparked one of the more interesting arguments about this list. Where
do we want to start?
No. We have the tweet. We have to talk about the tweet that Seth put out there, which was, you're a Bucks fan.
DFS.
Yeah, you're a Bucks fan. So his argument was, because Dorian Finney-Smith is in 4A, along with Brandon Ingram, who I think a lot of people project Brandon Ingram to get continuously better and probably be a legit all-star for the next few years. But once again,
he's already an all-star.
Yeah. And we're doing championship equity once again. So his argument was a role player of the level of Dorian Finney-Smith would be a better third guy on a team like the Bucks that have Chris Middleton and Giannis as the 1 and 2, as opposed to Brandon Ingram. So what was your thought on that?
That's literally insane.
Yeah.
Like, if you imagine the Bucks rolling out and it's Giannis with Ingram and Middleton playing off him, and then we just pit like Javon Carter out there. Who cares?
Sure.
Like,
yeah.
Like, I mean, what are you talking about? Putting Dorian Finney-Smith on the team makes them better. It's like, what the?
Yeah. I mean, Dorian Finney-Smith is a good player, and I think that he's going to fall into this low usage corner 3-point shooter who can defend guy that becomes a little bit overrated because of the fact that everyone loves the idea of scalability. Someone said putting Dorian Finney-Smith over or in the same tier as Brandon Ingram is just terminal scalability brain, which is the perfect way to put it. Like, all you care about is scaling, when like Brandon Ingram is 24 years old and has already made an all-star team and was just really good in the playoffs against the Suns, like in the first round, like
against Depoy runner-up,
Michael Bridges. Yeah, like, yeah, I think that he should definitely be at least in the third tier, I would say.
Yeah. Fuck, I forgot what I was gonna say now. This whole tier is, again, as we go further up the list, I get more and more problems with this tier. Like, why is Sabonis in 4A? Like,
championship team
I would
once
not
again.
Have Sabonis in 4A.
Sure.
If I'm trying to build if we're trying to build a fucking championship team, Sabonis is in like 5A for me. Like,
yeah. Also,
you
like,
should not have your team around Sabonis and win a championship. Like,
well, that's the thing, is that, like, if we're talking floor raising, I understand the inclusion of Sabonis and Fox and these guys that can just like get you 25 wins or whatever it is. Like, they're not going to like completely bottom out and like make your team like a 10-win team or whatever. But like, once again, if we're talking about championship equity, like, I don't think that Sabonis or Fox have any sort of legit championship equity to their games because they're so hard to build a team around. And that's something that the Kings are going to find out when, like, I think they'll be decent, but like, they've built this basically play-in team around two guys that are good players but very flawed.
Am I insane for thinking at least two of the Cavs are too low in this tier?
Darius Garland should not be this low.
No, Darius Garland 100% should not be this low.
So, okay, but hold on. Can I do a little aside about Darius Garland with Seth's opinion on him? So there was a podcast earlier this year that Sam Vecini did, the 2019 redraft, where he legitimately, so like they did, you know what I'm about to reference, right?
Wasn't Seth Partnow on that draft?
Yes, he was on the podcast. Yeah, so he was on the What do you mean? Was he still working for a front office? Was he still working for the Bucks?
No. Wasn't he on the podcast for this draft and he just refused to take Darius Garland?
Yeah, so no. What happened was they talked about the first pick, the second pick. I believe it was like Ja 1, Zion 2. They got to the third pick. And this was, by the way, in January. Darius Garland is in the middle of his first All-Star season. He's having a breakout year. And they're talking about how they rank guys, right? And Seth argued that he considered taking Daniel Gafford, who he didn't even include on this list.
Yeah.
Over Darius Garland, who just made the All-Star team, is 21 years old, 22 years old, will definitely get better.
Young as hell and just got maxed.
One of the best pull-up shooters in the NBA, a very good passer, a guy you can run your offense with. And he considered taking Daniel Gafford, who was traded for Troy Brown Jr. He's a fine player, a lower-end starting center, maybe a middle-tier starting center. And he argued that they were also both better than Jordan Poole, or he argued that Gafford was also better than Jordan Poole and Tyler Hero, which, like, to me, terminal scalability brain, like, that it's just a ridiculous concept to me. But Darius Garland being at 4A is way too low for me. Way too low for me.
Yeah, like, I also would. Okay, obviously Ingram's too low. Like,
Mhm.
I don't know. Horford feels too high. Like, obviously he's good, but also he's either really good or like pretty unplayable at this point. Like,
Well,
or at
he's
least
probably going
back.
to age out. Like, that's the con.
Yeah.
Like, he was really good in the playoffs just now, though. Like, he had games
Yeah.
where, like, he legitimately won the Celtics some games.
And obviously he's probably appropriately rated coming off those playoffs. I just don't know if he can do it again. But again, at this point, why am I counting out Al Horford? It seems like he's eternal. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
The defensive player of the year is in 4A, which is just amusing to me. Like, I don't know how much, like, if Marcus Smart should really be any higher, but it's just amusing to me that the defensive player of the year for a team that made the finals
Who was probably
4A.
just, yeah, who was probably, this whole tier has three of those Celtics: Robert Williams, Al Horford.
Darius Garland and DeJounte Murray being the same tier is insulting to Darius Garland.
Yeah.
DeJounte Murray is too high. Like,
I don't know. Dorian Finney-Smith being in the same tier as Darius Garland is fucking insane to me.
Yep. And then also just Mobley is in the same tier.
Yeah. I don't like this tier that much now that I look at it.
Yeah,
but
no, it just gets like, gets about, there should be a 4C, move a bunch of these guys to 4C, and then like,
yeah, at least raise up some
sort of separation there. Like,
Sure.
I don't know, whatever. And then we get into like 3C, like the first, scrolling up from the bottom, the first name in 3C is immediately like, Seth, what the fuck are you doing?
Klay Thompson.
Like, yes, Klay Thompson. What the fuck? Like, Klay Thompson was actively bad.
Yeah.
And is at best a guy now. He is not a star. He if he's not making shots, he's lighting minutes on fire at this point. Like,
I mean, he was Wiggins was way better than Klay Thompson in the playoffs.
And Wiggins it wasn't Wiggins in 4?
Yes.
Yeah, so it's like, what?
Yeah, I don't get that at all. We literally just saw this. We just had a full year, and maybe that's based on reputation. Maybe that's on Klay will be better this year because he has less time off he has more time off the injury and all that stuff. But like, yeah, I would argue Klay was not very good in the playoffs and like was pretty middling all season and like was definitely not. I would legitimately argue he was like the 5th best player on the Warriors in this year's. Like, I think Looney was better. I think Wiggins was better. I think Draymond was definitely better.
High for Klay Thompson.
Yeah, I was like, who?
Gary Payton II was better than Klay Thompson.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
He provided more value with the defensively than Klay Thompson did offensively or defensively.
Well, I guess the thing with Klay is like, does he? Because playing off Steph is pretty easy, but like, does Klay have a little bit of that invisible impact because of the fact that like you still have to be concerned with the shooting even though he missed so many fucking shots. And by the end of the playoffs, I think he looked a little bit better defensively. Like, I think he figured some things out, but like certainly was not a prime Klay run. Like, I think outside of that game 6 where he went off, it was pretty disappointing. And they didn't really win necessarily because of him, but more kind of in spite of him. So, all right.
Okay.
And he's in the same tier as Draymond, who also had his struggles, but also made the Warriors the best defense in the NBA and in the playoffs. So that seems pretty important.
Jaren Jackson Jr. is too high at 3C.
I don't know about that.
Jaren Jackson Jr. is never going to be able to stay on the court in an NBA playoffs unless he learns how to not foul every 5 seconds.
Yeah, he's like
all
23
he does on defense is foul every possession, and then in the playoffs he doesn't get away with it and is off the court. Like,
yeah, when he can stay on the court, he's really fucking good, but it's definitely tough for him for sure.
I watched him foul out in the Timberwolves playoff game in 18 minutes. It was incredible.
Yeah, I know. It was not the best showing, but then again in the Warriors series, he was a beast defensively. Like, he was he was the reason they were in that series and not Ja Morant. Like, which is kind of crazy to say because Ja's obviously really good, but like, that's why I could see the argument, but once again, the injuries and just the ability to stay on the court, I could hear him being lower because of that. But like, he was a defensive player of the year candidate. He is important to what the Grizzlies do. And like, if he, in theory, once again, the Michael Porter Jr. thing, in theory, can stay healthy, then sure. Like, having him as the third whatever is fine to me. But I didn't have
Timberwolves. Why is Ant in 3C if we're projecting it all? Like,
yeah, LaMelo and Ant are both in this tier, right?
I would have Ant in 3B just based off the playoffs. Like, what do we do? Like, I don't understand.
Yeah. I feel like everyone's really low on LaMelo now, too. Like, I feel like, did he not just have two of the best seasons that we've ever seen from a 19 and 20-year-old to start his career?
Yeah.
Like, why are people, like, putting, like in they talked about...
I can tell you why. It's because no one watches the Hornets.
Yeah.
But...
And also his style...
Him having a really fun team that has now been ruined by Miles Bridges being a disgusting human being.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean... I don't see LaMelo. Like, I think LaMelo probably... A lot of guys in this tier that, like, this might be more like the upside tier, where, like, there's proven, like, legit guys who have made all-star teams in here, like DeMar DeRozan, Donovan Mitchell, whatever. And then you have your upside guys, like, and your high-level role players in here, too. But, like, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is a good example of someone who, like, you're betting on to continue to get better. But, like, is Shai better than Ant and LaMelo right now? Because, like, I think...
Well, Shai, we don't know. We theoretically don't know. We know the answer is yes. Well, he knows that he's really fucking good because he keeps winning with garbage rosters.
True.
To the
He
point
is.
where the Thunder
I love Shai. Yeah, no, definitely. He's awesome. But,
you
like...
sprained your ankle. I'm like, no, he didn't. No, you sprained your ankle.
Oh, Woj just tweeted and said, a slight breeze just took out SGA for the next 2 months. So unfortunately, he will not be playing. I'm sorry that if you thought that there was really some Woj news there, but no, like, I don't know. I guess this is more like guys who are trending downward. Like, Draymond is definitely not as good as he used to be. Ben Simmons doesn't play basketball anymore. Bradley Beal's coming off the worst year of his career. And then there are other guys that are trending upwards, like LaMelo, SGA, Ant, and then, like, question mark guys like Ben and Zion. And, yeah, I don't know. This tier's fine to me. I actually thought as the list went higher, it made a little bit more sense. Like, what did you... Well, I'll have to ask you your opinion with the Chris Middleton and Drew Holiday being in the 3A.
You know my... Okay, so with 3A... I also think, 3A is, like, Bam should be in 3B. Like, Bam does not belong in this tier at all. And then Chris Middleton also does not belong in this tier, but for good reason. Chris Middleton should be at least 2C, if not high. Like, Chris Middleton should be high. We just watched, like, when he's healthy, the Bucks literally won a title. Like, what are we doing?
And he was the second best player in that team, even though people love Drew.
We've seen what happens if we take out Chris Middleton and it's just Giannis and Drew. And Giannis literally, like, Drew cannot be the second option. Like, just cannot be the second option.
There's just no offense in the half court, especially. But
Chris Middleton is our point guard, our best wing defender, our second option.
Yeah.
Like, oh God,
I could hear the argument for him being higher, but, like, I think he's pretty much like, the next tier up is guys who were superstars at one point, like Chris Paul, Damian Lillard. So that's kind of, like, trending downward, and then guys who were, like, one-man offense, Trae Young. I guess your argument would be you think Jason Tatum and Chris Middleton are, like, basically the same guy.
Yeah, but and then especially looked what happened. Like, also, like, Jimmy Butler, it's whatever. Anthony Davis does not belong in 2B. He's not
Jimmy
real.
Butler at 2A is fine to me. I would say.
Jimmy Butler at 2A is fine after the season he had, despite the previous season he got outscored by Bryn Forbes. Playoff performer Jimmy Butler. Anthony Davis, what's the... I know the idea of Anthony Davis is in 2B. Where would you actually put real Anthony Davis? The guy who shot 17% from 3 last year.
Probably in, like, 3B or 3C. Like, the reality of what Anthony Davis is, because his body is just fucking falling apart.
Yeah, I'll put him in 3C with Ben Simmons and Zion, because...
Those are the question mark guys. Like,
the question
obviously
mark guys.
Anthony Davis, when healthy, is way better than those guys. Oh, I wouldn't even say way better than Zion. He's better than Zion, but I wouldn't say he's way better. But, like, the reality of the situation is that Anthony Davis is not Anthony Davis anymore. Like, if Anthony Davis has a comeback year, I'm all for that. I actually went back and I listened to our podcast where we talked about the tiers thing, and I actually think I would probably had Anthony Davis lower, to be honest. Like, I just don't trust him to be able to stay healthy And even if he does stay healthy, like, is he the same version of Anthony Davis that we saw the Mickey year in the bubble?
Yeah, the only time we've seen Anthony Davis be good at basketball was fake basketball that he would not have been able to play in if it was a normal season because he got hurt and was able to get over his injury and rest for several months and then play in the fake basketball. Like,
to be fair, he was carried by Drew Holiday against the Blazers in that one series. So
yeah, Drew Holiday and Rondo.
No, but
why is Ja Morant in 2B?
That is the one. I feel like Ja Morant is, and I hate to say this because I love Ja. I think he's the most overrated player in the NBA. I'm going to be totally honest.
Well, his team is yet to be good with him. Better yet not.
Look,
the
Ja,
Grizzlies still have a negative net rating with Ja Morant.
Ja's upside is insane. Like, Ja athletically, what he can do as a scorer, all of that shit. If the 3-point shot continues to like fall in the same way that it did for a good stretch of this season, then he will be an all-NBA player for years to come. But what he is right now is not in the same tier as some of these guys. He's not as good as...
Trae Young and Ja Morant are in the same tier.
He's Trae Young is better than Ja Morant. Like, Trae Young...
Imagine if the Grizzlies had Trae Young instead of Ja.
We talked about that on the trade podcast. Like, if you were to switch the two, I know defensively they're both really bad defensively. Like, Trae's really bad, but like Ja's not enough better that like the difference in offensive gap to me, especially when it comes to like high end playoff basketball. Like, Trae's a better shooter. He's a way better playmaker and passer. The only thing that Ja's better at than Trae is rim pressure, and that, at times, we saw in the playoffs went away. Like, I thought the Timberwolves did a good job guarding him. I thought the Warriors did at certain points. Like, I just, my whole thing with Ja is like, I feel like he gets talked about like he's already a top 10 player, and in reality, he's more like a top 20 player. And eventually, he could get to the point where he's top 10 because he is, once again, that talented and that good. But for what he is right now, I feel like he's just pretty overrated.
Yeah, like, again, the Grizzlies have a negative net rating with Ja Morant on the court, and that's also just partially due to.
Wait, is that true? Is it negative net rating, or is it that their defense is so good when he's off the court that it's better? I don't think they have a negative net rating.
I thought they were like minus very little and then plus like 7 with him off the court.
I gotta look at this because I'm very...
Yeah, please correct. I know at minimum it's definitely higher with him off the court.
I know it's better with him off the court, and their record without him was fucking insane. Like,
well, they also were playing nobody for whatever that's worth. But
yeah. And look, once again,
they won the playoff game against the Warriors without him
by 50 points, right? Like, yeah, they like destroyed them without. But hold on. And then they made the series closer with it. All right. So with Ja on the court in the 21-22 season, they had they had a better net rating when he was off the court, but they had a positive net rating when he was on the court. So they were plus 4.7 per 100 possessions. A large amount of that is due to his bad defense. And then off the court, they were a plus 6.88 in about the same amount of minutes too. So
Desmond Bane Cook.
Yeah, I mean, look, Ja's amazing, and I would gladly be wrong if Ja becomes a top 10 player as early as next season. Wouldn't shock me. I think he's fucking amazing. But I still think based on what he is being talked about, I think that it's just a bit much this early in his career. Like, I think that, like, he's very, very good and, like, still has his flaws with the shot coming and going, with the defense. Like, I'm just like not as high as like the guys that are in this tier with him, like Jimmy Butler and Trae Young. Devin Booker being below Ja Morant.
Yeah.
How is Devin Booker below Ja Morant?
Because Game 7 happened and Dorian Finney-Smith therefore gets to go up 4 tiers.
Yeah, that makes no sense. There aren't a lot of guys that are below Ja Morant that I would argue like have to be above him, but I certainly would say Devin Booker is above him. Like, that's not even a question to me. But all right, let's just wrap it up and talk about the top of the list. Did you have a massive problem? Did you have a massive problem with it? What was your issue?
Luka should be in 1A, like not even like a discussion. Like, what are we doing?
Sure.
I also would probably knock Durant down to 1B, if we're being honest with ourselves. We watch what happens when Kevin Durant is the best player at this point.
Although a year ago,
yeah, he
when he
ended
was
my
the best
life
player,
almost.
yeah, a year ago when he was the best player on the team, he got him about as close as you can to losing to the eventual
By
champions.
yourself, yeah.
Sure.
So I don't know, but we watched him literally. They just hard doubled him, and he didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
So
I don't know. It's hard to say. That was such a weird
it's
series.
Reputation leaving him up there, which is fine. But why is LeBron in 1C then? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like LeBron is so, but his team is so shit. Like, what do you want LeBron to do? Like, you know,
in defense of Durant, when he was healthy this year, I guess you could say the same thing about LeBron. But Durant averaged like 30 points on insane efficiency, and the Nets were the #1 seed before he got hurt.
Yeah, before he got hurt again. But
again, that's also important. He does get hurt a lot.
Yeah, unfortunately, he's played what, like, I know one of the seasons only had like 72 games, but he's only played like 40, 50 games a season since he's come back from the injury.
Yeah.
Like 2 seasons in a row now, he's had like a leg injury and had to sit out for a significant amount of the season, where it's just like, are we sure this, like, is he ever going to be able to play a full season? He even shouldn't, but.
Well,
and then also, Giannis and Steph are way better than the other guys in 1A to the point they should be in their own tier.
I don't think I disagree with that. I think you could put Steph and Giannis in their own tier, and then have Jokic, Durant,
Embiid, Luka
below that. Yeah, sure.
And then the theoretical Kawhi, LeBron 1B tier of
right.
Yeah, you guys could easily be in 1A or 1S, whatever you want to call it. But
right.
Yeah, we got to see it again.
Yeah, I don't know. I think here's the thing. I love Jokic. I think he's really good. I think that what he's been able to do with a lot of not basically any talent around him has been very impressive. I also think that if you're building a championship team, it's going to be interesting to see how he can perform defensively in the playoffs, because everyone always talks about how good he is, like how he's a playoff player and stuff. And while that is true offensively, he's also had some real disastrous defensive games in the playoffs. And some of it is due to the fact that like he's carrying the whole offense, and some of it is due to the fact that they haven't had a ton of defensive talent around him.
Yeah, no, it's when it's like Austin Rivers and shit. So the Warriors just hunt Jokic on every possession.
Right.
Like,
yeah. But the Suns did the same thing. Like, look, Jokic is amazing. I'm not saying he's not. But what I'm saying is that I think having 1S as a tier, which are guys that have already been the #1 player on a championship team recently, would make more sense, because you put Giannis and Steph in their own tier because they literally were the best 2 players on the last 2 championship teams. And then you have Jokic and Luka and Embiid, guys that like we think in theory could be, but like I honestly,
Durant, again, who in theory could be, but also still has never been the best player in a championship team.
Yes, I agree with that. A lot of people would not, but I agree with that. I think Steph is always the best player on those.
See who's listening to this podcast.
Well, we're deep enough in it that we won't get people yelling at us.
Floach isn't going to listen this late.
Yeah. But yeah, so overall, there were some gripes I had with the list, but like, I mean, I'm going to have gripes with every fucking list that gets put out there.
Correct.
So, all right, well, MB, thanks for joining me again. Hopefully we get some slop soon so we can do an emergency stream, and I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, sounds good, bud.